wonder. These are just some of the words used to describe Dr. Harvey Passes. Dr. Passes explores interesting people and ideas that will stimulate you. He questions the people who develop, create, and employ novel concepts in business and everyday lives. He especially loves to speak with successful people. How did they do it? How can you do it too? So let's join Dr. Harvey Passes in his quest of wonder and curiosity as we watch Dr. Harvey Passes Presents.
We're back. No, I don't mean the show. I mean we're back on Long Island, and we're back to Long Island wine country. One of my few passionate loves about Long Island is our marvelous wine country. We've got a great place that makes fabulous wines, terrific wines, and it's a great way to spend a day with your family, and we'll talk more about that later. I want you to meet someone who I recently became familiar with and had the good opportunity to interview him for a magazine article, and I have a column in a magazine and on Long Island wine, and I enjoyed his company so much, and I saw him to be so knowledgeable on our Long Island wines that I invited him to come down. So I want you to meet Richard Olsen-Harbich.
Thanks, Harvey.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
It's great, and it was a little bit of a drive for you. Let me tell my
back
viewer
to my
at home.
hometown.
Absolutely. Let me tell my viewer at home a little bit about you so they understand who you are and why I asked you to come here. Richard is the winemaker at one of our esteemed wineries on Long Island called Raphael. And the town?
In Peconic.
It's in Peconic. Okay, I forgot. I was going to say Cutchogue. It's in Peconic.
Yes.
And
so it's big you couldn't get it.
Well, it is a big winery.
It's a big town.
Well, the winery is big too. And he was so pleasant. Richard is originally from right where we're sitting in New Hyde Park. And then from New Hyde Park, you went to school at Cornell in Ithaca.
Yes.
In their, what division?
In the ag school.
Agricultural school.
Plant science, food science.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Don't give me these abbreviations because my viewers are going to say, "What do you mean ag school?"
Well, okay.
Okay. And then from there, in 1983 till today.
Till today.
You've been out on the east end of Long Island.
I actually started working in the industry in 1981 with Mudd's Vineyard, which is in Southold, when I was home for summer.
Well-respected name.
And I literally started from the ground up, putting in plants, posts, wire. Riding the planter, weeding.
Literally the ground.
Literally the ground.
Literally, you stuck your fingers in the dirt and you worked in the field.
Seriously, yes.
You know.
And so, going into my 28th season in the industry, I got into it because I thought it was going to take me to exotic, faraway places.
It did,
so
a few blocks down the street
just a few blocks, a few hours away.
But you know,
but it's wonderful. I love it. And
you know what's happening? That area, though, is becoming a destination, exotic place to be.
It's good and bad.
Yes, it's good and bad.
I started actually on the East End, not on the North Fork. I started in the Hamptons. I was in Bridgehampton for the second winery that opened.
I remember that, Bridgehampton winery.
And I saw the Hamptons in 1983 and how it changed. And there's some similarities, unfortunately, in some ways. In other ways, it's good economically for the region, but it has changed. It has changed even since I started to live there in the mid-90s.
Right.
Both good and bad. But still, the North Fork has been able to preserve a lot of its agricultural heritage
absolutely.
Structurally, through farmland preservation in particular.
The people are very active about it.
Yes.
Very active. The government's very active about it. They're really doing things
about it. It was
about
more so there than any place else in New York State, really.
I agree with that. So let's get down and let's talk about wine. First, all these wines here you've made.
Yes, these
correct?
are all Raphael within the last few years.
Okay. We're going to talk about all of them, and then we're going to save, almost to the end, a wine called Merlions, because I have some knowledge about what that wine is, and that's a little bit different topic.
Right.
So let's first taste wine and then have a conversation. So it'll be a lot of fun. Our first wine that you suggested we pour was your Grand Cru, as you call it, your Raphael Chardonnay. So I'll pour you a little bit of this here.
Yes.
And I will have some here. And the Chardonnay grape. Are all these grapes, by the way, again, save Merlions, are all the grapes that you make here, do they come from your estate, from the Raphael property?
They're all estate produced and bottled. The Chardonnay we actually purchased from a neighboring vineyard because we didn't plant Chardonnay, but we do have some control over the care and the management of that fruit, so it is still an estate product.
Right, and I know the winery, the property that you get your Chardonnay from, and they make wonderful wines.
Right.
And I know they've got great fruit.
Everything else is all on our property.
Yeah, not grapefruit, but great fruit.
Right.
Terrific.
Sometimes we get grapefruit.
Yeah, well, it's true.
In a flavor.
But I don't like that. I don't like my wines that tart, citrusy, you know?
Right. This is a wine that I've been making for actually a very, very long time. I first started making these stainless steel Chardonnays, which we call them non-oaked. It's been a trend in the last few years. People don't seem to like all the oak flavors in the wines as they maybe had in years past. They want more freshness. They want more fruit flavors. And I actually started to make these wines in the early 80s at Bridgehampton when everybody wanted oak, big, buttery, rich Chardonnay.
Those days.
And so really on Long
Island, right.
Pancake wine we used to call it because it was so sweet and syrupy almost.
Butterscotch.
Right.
Right.
Right. And so really what the North Fork can do are wines like this. And we've come full circle back to this kind of style. And I really believe that this is the style of white wines that are best suited and that we can produce the highest quality of when we're picking earlier, we're not putting them into barrel, we're letting them be fresh, we're just letting them be what they want to be without trying to manipulate them.
I just had a sip of this.
It's very simple.
This is like taking a grape and biting into it. It's very little.
That's exactly what I wanted to do.
Very little man-made manipulation to this.
Right.
I mean, in September, October, when you go over to the vines, pull one off, just, spit out the pit.
They don't make that noise though. They should make that noise.
But it's just fabulous. It's very fresh.
Yeah, that's what I was after.
Very fresh. This would be great with some nice seafood. I mean, any seafood this would be great.
That's the whole idea.
Unsauced.
Because Long Island is, known for its seafood. I have people coming in the winery constantly. They tell me, I don't like Chardonnay. I don't want Chardonnay. What else do you have? And I'll pull out one of these, and they won't really see the label.
Just pour it.
Just pour. Oh, I love this. This
what
is
is
great.
It? Is it
Pinot Grigio? No. So it's really a stylistic approach.
I love this. This is wonderful. There's a hints of very light pineapple in this. And very light pineapple. It's an easy drinking wine. The acid balance is very, very appropriate. It's not acid forward. This is a wonderful wine on its own, and it'd be lovely with some cheeses or maybe some filet of sole. As long as you don't have a heavy sauce, a heavy garlic sauce.
Right, it would get covered up by that.
Yeah, This is lovely. It's
very
wine.
clean. Roasted vegetables on a barbecue, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Just fresh. I want people to think of Long Island when they drink these wines. I want them to remember their visit. Because when you have wines from other places, when you have Italian wines, or you have New Zealand or other faraway vineyards and faraway wineries, there's a certain historical connection, a geographical connection almost, when you think about where that wine is from.
Right.
And you might have brought something back from vacation, or you might have traveled and brought wine back. And there should be a connection there. And it should be stylistically, and it should be a taste connection too.
You're saying exactly the way I feel, that wine is not this is not a beverage. No, don't. I did it while you were talking.
Oh, you did?
That's
I'm sorry.
That's your new wine.
Oh. Very, very slick.
Wine is not a beverage. To me, wine is an experience. It's an extra spice for the event that you're going through with someone else.
Right.
It's an extra spice for the dinner. It enhances the evening hour, and it enhances the flavor of the food. That's my opinion.
And it can enhance the after dinner hour as well.
Absolutely. So this is a Sauvignon Blanc now that I covertly sneaked in front of you, and your Sauvignon Blanc, remember, being a very fascinating, interesting wine. Oh, yeah. Great nose. More powerful nose, more intense than the Chardonnay.
This is made exactly the same way as the Chardonnay. The only difference is that the grape variety is different. Made identical, really. Very cold fermentation, which I didn't mention earlier about the Chardonnay. That's one of the things that keeps the flavors and the aromas intact, is to ferment cool. And that's an advent of that's really modern day winemaking. When you say there's not much human intervention, but yes, there is quite a bit mostly with white wines more so than red. But we do have to guide these grapes all through the year. They need complete babysitting, 24-hour care essentially.
That's right. These are your babies.
They're the babies, and so there is a lot that goes into the
I'm
production
getting
of these.
pear. I'm getting fig. I'm getting pear. I'm getting fig. Oh man, just fabulous. It used to be quintessentially a Sauvignon Blanc would be, new mown grass. You cut the grass and you got all that chlorophyll coming, and indeed many have that. But it seems for some reason that winemakers, especially on Long Island and in New Zealand, are going away from that, and you're getting these unusual fruits in there in the nose.
Well, part of it is that the fruit, as it gets riper, loses more of that grassiness, that fresh mown grass. That to me, that's a sign of almost unripeness. And when the fruit gets riper, it's going to get a little more tropical. It's going to get a little more fruit-like than it would, kiwi, gooseberry, or lime even.
Lime, that's what I'm getting there.
And grapefruit.
I'm getting lime, yeah.
And less of that herbal grassiness, which
Right.
to me, it can be not as attractive as it could be.
Right, I agree with that.
The other thing about these two wines, and all of the wines here on the table, is that they're all made with a basket press. And
Explain what's basket press.
the basket press is the old school wooden press that your grandfather or some people's
My grandfather
had.
didn't. He was running from the pogroms in Russia, so he wasn't making wine.
He didn't
but
have time.
He didn't have time.
No,
right.
okay. Well, some of them that escaped.
Maybe
and
he
didn't
made
get back.
Slivovitz for all I know. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
probably. But it's out of wood, and it's wooden vertical slats, and the grapes go in, and it's very simple. It's hundreds of year old technology, and we brought that into Raphael. We're the only winery on the East Coast to do that on a commercial scale, and probably in the country one of the few that actually make white wine in that kind of press, because typically it's used for red wine production. So it's very unique. They're all picked by hand as well, which I think is a very important aspect of how I make wine. I've done it all different ways. So picked by hand, each cluster someone is looking at, someone is selecting, putting it in the basket. And then it's a very traditional type of fermentation and winemaking. So
I like that. Mono. That sounds great. This is fabulous. This is a marvelous Sauvignon Blanc. And I must tell you, when I speak to people and they say to me, Long Island wines, nah, forget it. And they say, when I was out there like 20 years ago, you kidding me? Now, the world has changed in the past 20, 30 years, 35 years since Alex and Louisa,
Very much
shoved
so.
the grapes into the ground. And the wines are very different. The technology has improved. More education has gone into everything out there. And it's become a tremendous passion and an important business out there.
Absolutely.
So the wines are terrific. If I have to say, where would I compare these wines? I can't compare them to anything, because Long Island has its own personality. But if I have to, I would say more French than California. California is just inundated with sun,
Right.
that you wind up with these big, fat, jammy wines. I'm not saying they're bad. It's a style.
it's a style.
These wines here are more elegant. They're very, some ways, they're sotto voce, in a very soft voice. They're letting you know they exist without
like that.
smacking you in the face.
Right.
It's a style. And most Americans don't get it. They're
Right.
looking for,
Well, when you talk about domestic wines, that has been the model. California wines
Correct.
have been the paradigm, if you will, of what domestic United States wines are supposed to taste like. These wines, and I'm sure most people have had them, are more like European wines.
no question.
So even the everyday person who's only had a few wines in their life was probably drinking have drunk a French or Italian or a German wine at some point in their life. And so that's what we're more like, actually. Since the day we started, we saw that similarity. When I first got into the business, and this is going past 20 years ago, so I know what some people are talking about
Right.
when they say, there's been a big, I don't want to try those, I tried them 20 years ago.
Right.
Well, things have changed tremendously, and where it has changed the most has been in the vineyard, how we're growing the grapes, what varieties we grow, how much leaf removal we're doing, the crop control, how much yield we can do. And time again, we're looking to the old world for advice and for information. When I first started, the only information in English was from California.
Right.
And it didn't apply at all.
Different region.
Different region, different world. The only thing we have in common is we speak English, really.
Yeah.
That's about it when it comes to winemaking. And so the French information, as it became more available and more translated,
had more value.
it's totally what we're doing.
You're on this similar latitude?
Not even a latitude. It's that we're temperate. We get 4 seasons. We get rain. We get humidity.
The maritime climate?
We're near the water, so we have fogs. We have nice days. We have clouds. We have
long
rain.
growing season?
Growing season is very similar. In fact, when the first work was done on the region, the area that our region was most similar to on a worldwide basis, including domestic sites, the one region we were most similar to was Bordeaux. We were less similar to anything else in this country, our own country, and we're more similar to Bordeaux, which was very interesting. And the reason is the water. The water surrounds us.
Keeps
in
it
Bordeaux,
temperate.
the water is nearby as
Same
well.
thing. Same thing. You know, a lot of people should realize is that during colonial days and thousands of years before that, Long Island was always considered the breadbasket of the colonies and the breadbasket, so to speak, for the Native Americans that lived here, because that finger sticking out into the water is protected by the temperateness of the sea.
That's right.
And that's where we get these wonderful growing, and the grapes that come from there are fantastic. I'm going to conclude this part of the conversation with a comment, and that is great wine begins in the vineyard. Is that correct?
That's a very, very old and very accurate saying.
Okay.
And there's a second part of that, too. That's an old French proverb that says, great wines are only grown close to water. And
we are.
It's probably someone from Bordeaux who made that up, but not from Burgundy.
This is delicious. As a rosé of Merlot. Most people wouldn't even recognize it and say, wait a minute, Merlot, this is delicious. It's thirst quenching. This is a quaffing wine. This is a poolside wine. This is a luncheon wine. This is maybe with some maybe cold ham, some fried chicken. You know, that would this is fabulous for that.
Thank you. Provincially, they're done with lower alcohol, so you can have them for lunch without having to go back to work and feeling like you have to take a nap, which is not good. So they're low alcohol. They made to go with just about anything, but mostly light luncheon food traditionally. And traditionally, they're not supposed to be sweet, so these are dry.
Terrific.
As well. Food.
Let's take a moment now, and as we move now to different grapes. I see right now we have here a bottle that says Cabernet Franc.
Yes.
Is Cabernet Franc now the new kid in town on Long Island, and the new grape kid in town? That I'm going to switch to this glass because I have the ability to do it.
Yes.
And what's your thoughts on Cabernet Franc? Because this was always a blending grape. I see you've got it here on its own.
Right. Cabernet Franc was, as you said, traditionally a blending grape in Bordeaux because it survives cold. And it's always planted for insurance when they had cold temperatures. The Loire Valley, which is north of Bordeaux and running centrally in the middle of France, has grown Cabernet Franc for centuries as the red wine of the region because it can survive in that area. It's very hardy. And so
thick skin?
Thick skin, but also just very strong. Just doesn't falter in very cold winters as easily.
Not like Pinot Noir.
Not like Pinot Noir or some of the other Bordeaux's.
This is absolutely delicious. Oh, that is a yummy, yummy wine. It's almost like a candy apple, maybe light strawberries, and it's light, medium weight.
It's not a heavy wine.
Not a heavy wine.
It's more like Pinot Noir that way.
Absolutely.
It's not going to be a big, fat, fruit bomb.
Right.
Like some West Coast wines are going to be.
You know, people have to realize that there's a wine for every circumstance. There's a wine for every occasion.
Right.
You don't say, well, I like my wines big. Well, why if you're having something that doesn't go with it?
It's like music.
Thank you.
You have some days where you want to have Led Zeppelin and other days where you want to have Mozart.
There you go.
I mean, so you don't want the pounding bass every day.
Absolutely.
At least I
Bravo.
So there's different moods, different wines for different foods, different moods, different tastes. I mean,
but one thing that I cannot do without, and that is poor wine. In other words,
oh yeah.
I mean, I
like
love all the various
like bad
types.
music.
That's right. I don't want bad music. I want the wine made well, and you'll know when it's not made well. there'll be terrible smells and terrible tastes, and it'll be
Right.
and it'll be lingering. And basically, you don't have to be.
It's out of tune. It's out of time.
There you go. It's like the car. You know if it's running
Right.
right or not. It's
Right.
bumping along the road.
Right.
You take the wine, you put it to your mouth, you taste it. Do you like what you taste? If you don't,
It's that simple.
move on.
Right.
It is that simple.
It
You don't
really
need
is.
someone to tell you
No.
you're wrong. No,
No.
this is delicious.
We didn't have to go to class to figure out what food we liked
No,
or what music we liked.
no, but there are a lot of people who
So why
want
should
you
we?
to.
Why should we go to class to?
Whoa.
Well,
There you go.
we need a class for glassware.
Right, right, absolutely.
But we'll leave that
I
one
think
alone.
I think you should stop pulling the grapes off by hand. I think you're you're getting a little bit too strong.
We're getting too
there.
worked up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I enjoy passionate winemakers, but enough is enough. Jeez. Okay, let's take this La Fontana. La Fontana, what is this a blend of various grapes?
This is a blend. This is our what some people might call a meritage blend, which means traditionally a blend of a number of varieties from Bordeaux. And in this case, there's Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Petit Verdot that is blended in. Cabernet Sauvignon as well in some years, and Malbec in some years. So we use all 5 varieties in different levels. It's going to change from year to year, and that's what this particular label has provided. More of a blended red wine than a varietal red wine.
So don't expect this to taste the same next year.
Right.
Okay.
It's different every
Letting you know
every
I'm
year.
blending it, and it's not going to be soda. That every year it's going to taste the same.
Right. If that's the case, then
different
that's the wonderful
varieties.
thing about wine is that it's going to be different, especially in this region. Again, you go to the West Coast, there are wineries and winemakers that are simply dedicated to producing the same flavors year in and year out. That can only be done artificially with gas chromatography, with additives, with flavors, with color,
They have to.
with aromas to have a consistent flavor. They have their market. They're making big money, but these wines, as a lot of old world wines, artisanal wines, they're going to be slightly different. Our climate is a little bit different every year.
Right. Lately we've been getting
Every
some great
season
vintages.
is different. Your own personal life last year, your season, is going to be different than it is this year.
Right.
It's just how life is.
Right.
It really reflects life.
Yummy wine. Very nice wine. Very different from the Cab Franc I just tasted because now you're getting the nuances and the characteristics of the other grapes.
This is also the first wine that has been in oak. The Cabernet Franc was also not put in oak.
Not oaked.
Not oaked at all.
No,
So
it's-
it allows itself to be fruity.
Delicious wine. This wine is a little more serious than the Cabernet Franc. A little more serious. When I say more serious, I mean I can have more substantial food with this. Now I can maybe have heartier roasts, as opposed to Cab Franc. I love it, but I'm afraid if I were to sit down with a big heavy roast, this might not have enough oomph.
Right. It's a little more playful.
Yeah, right. This now we're getting a little more serious, a little more muscle to it, which is absolutely wonderful. Very, very nice wine. And moving along now I want to ask you a question I've been holding off. And that is, we've now graduated here to a full Merlot, not a Rosé Merlot, but
Right.
now we got a Merlot. Why is Merlot so significant on Long Island? Why is that the most wide, I don't know if it is widely, but it is the #1 red grape on Long Island? Why?
It is because it just has lent itself well in the vineyard, how it grows, how it needs less care. It seems to have an affinity for the region. Vineyard managers across the board agree that this variety is the easiest to manage. If you have a great employee at your office and you know how great they are because they'll do the work without you having to tell them, without you
I have
having to
great
manage.
employees.
You don't have to manage them. You don't have to micromanage.
Correct.
That's kind of what Merlot is.
You can leave it alone.
It's the star of the team. Leave it alone. It's going to produce. And every, over 25 years, 30 years at this point plus, we've really seen that be the top variety in terms of consistently giving us great red wines year in and year out. Some of the other varieties have difficulty doing that, in my opinion, whereas Merlot doesn't. And to me, the North Fork is basing its reputation, it's putting all its chips in, I think, since day one for red wine production. Because let's face it, in the Northeast, there aren't too many areas that are making great red wines.
Right.
There's more white wine production
Right.
than there is red.
This is fabulous.
And,
This Merlot is delicious.
This is what we can do.
This is a wine that I can chew. I mean,
Right.
you've got all that pucker in the mouth. This wine is drinkable tonight, and it's also a wine I feel you can lay down. What year is this?
Absolutely, 2001.
This is
it's already
01.
7 years old.
It's 7 years old, and
It's
yet
not even.
I still have the astringency in my
Right.
mouth, the tannin. It's still there as a preservative to let this wine continue.
Right, these are legacy type of wines,
Fabulous
especially
wines.
the first label.
Fabulous wines, absolutely fabulous. Let's get over. We got about 4 minutes left. Go over to the Merlions. Tell me about Merlions briefly.
The Merlions it was a response to the Merlot phenomenon on Long Island, and
Thank you.
5 growers got together and we decided to form a group that was going to promote the production of Merlot and fund research for it, and because it really is the backbone of red wine production for Long Island.
So the Alliance of Merlot.
Merlot producers.
So you call them Merlions.
So it's Merlions. Merlions is the wine that we produce. It's a cooperatively made wine. Is 2 barrels from each winery that go in.
And they're blended?
Blended together.
So everybody, the 5 wineries.
5 different
you're all
wineries.
serving this. You're all providing to the public the exact same wine.
Same wine. It's all put together as one. It's the show of solidarity and community, and also the proceeds. Many of the proceeds go to fund local research. So it's going back to the industry.
Oh, that is delicious. That is absolutely delicious.
It's a real novelty. There's not much of it either, which is makes
delicious.
it very rare.
The 01 Merlot was a little bit more serious than this, I must say. You know, let's get to what's your last one
different.
there. Petit Verdot?
Petit
We've got about
Verdot.
2 minutes left. Let's get cooking with this. I like the bottle.
Petit Verdot is one of the older varieties in the world. In fact, when you see an old grapevine, some of the oldest grapevines in the world, they live 100, 120, 150 years old. They're usually Petit Verdot because it's a very hardy vine. It doesn't die very easily.
But usually it's not used on its own.
Very rarely used on its own.
grape.
It's a blending grape. It has a lot of color, has a lot of acid.
Backbone.
So it's used in a small percentage in Bordeaux for blending. However, on Long Island, we're not Bordeaux. We're our own entity. And so I think it can express itself in a very positive way, and that's what it's doing here.
Listen,
It's a small production wine.
my hat's off to you because you absolutely put these wines in the precise exact order of body, of flavor, of taste, and everything. And your finale here, I think, was outstanding. Every one that I tasted was delicious, especially when we hit the 01 Merlot. Was fantastic. Merlions was just a delightfully wonderful wine. But this
You like that one?
This baby, you give me a porterhouse,
It's a big baby.
you give me anything you're going to serve me, but the food's got to be elegant because this is an elegant. If I drank this wine, my eyes closed, I would say this came from France. There's a certain elegance to the wine, there's a certain subtlety to the wine, and yet there's strength. It's a very strong feminine wine, for lack of a better way of putting it. You know, it's a real woman's liver. This is not liver.
Like a Hillary wine?
I don't know about that, but this is
Okay.
This is absolutely fabulous.
A Michelle Obama wine.
A Michelle Obama wine is absolutely it's just fabulous, and that's a great wine.
Thank you.
Will you come back another time, because there's a lot of things that I wrote down that
I'd
we didn't
certainly love to.
that we did not really get to any of the questions at all that I wanted to ask you, because I was enjoying your wines. But we'll just talk.
That's what happens with wine.
Absolutely, that's the beauty of it. We'll talk about screw caps. We'll talk about additives in wine. We'll talk about organic farming and just the
I'd love
list. Okay,
Absolutely.
we're out of time. You believe it?
Let's do it again.
You got it.
Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Terrific. Richard Olsen-Harbich was my guest, and winemaker from Raphael Winery, showing us some of the great pearls and gems that we have right here on Long Island. So, Dr. Pass is saying, got to get out of here. Time is up. See you again next time. And like this man here, like Richard Olsen-Harbich, whatever you do it with passion. Otherwise, what's the use?